Mona Kuhn creates photographs that feel at once intimate and deeply human. Her process is built on connection, spending time with her subjects, earning trust, and allowing something more personal to emerge in front of the camera. Through a nuanced and often unexpected visual language, she explores the inner life of her subjects as it surfaces through the body. Her work shifts the way we understand the nude, moving it away from traditional and towards something more psychological, more open, and distinctly contemporary. On this episode of The Crit House, Mona Kuhn discusses her 3 images that represent elements of her storied career.
I started photography because I'm restless and I don't want to be doing painting. It takes too long for me. I like how quick, I like how fast photography works as a medium. But then at the same time, once you know how to do photography, how do you do differently than everyone else? Because everyone else, especially now with the iPhone and things like that, everyone can do it. So my journey has been more about how to create my visual language and how to express myself through photography. And in doing so, in terms of, art and history and art history, the visual language that I have looked up to very much is a figurative, long language that I have seen in the paintings a lot, or sculptures. And my challenge has been to bring that kind of visual language into the field, into the fast field of photography, in a way that is distinguished and in a way that honors the presence of the people in front of my camera.
Would you say that you're generally influenced more by painters and works of art from other areas outside of photography?
I would say that I am very much influenced by things outside of photography, but not just painting. Sometimes I'm influenced by movies. I love movies. I like actually literature. That's also very wonderful for me to read and imagine things. I do that exercise quite a bit. Um, so yeah, I'm not a frustrated painter that became a photographer. I'm a very happy photographer. I don't want to be named anything else other than being a photographer, but I do get inspiration from movement, from anything happening around me, different series. I have had different influences, but anything visually around me. It could be me driving the car and I pass through a bus shelter with some kind of movie poster. It could be anything. I
Wh-
have my antennas up.
Where do you place yourself in the history of photography?
Yeah, I would say well, definitely figurative. I do like the works with people. I find that to be the biggest mystery of life, that we're inside of our bodies and who are we, basically. It's something that we cannot escape. It's also something that calls for intuitive work, meaning it's not a conceptual idea. I'm not conceptualizing and structuring and controlling the world out there. I'm actually collaborating with people in a very organic way, in a very intuitive way, where psychology is part of it. And I think that that's the beauty of being alive. For me, is to interact with people. I'm very comfortable talking to people. They mention I have a certain charisma. We do the work together because we want to do it. I work with people that would like to participate. So maybe they're not in the field of being creatives themselves, but they have a curiosity for it and they want to see how it is working together. But most importantly, I like to think of myself not necessarily as a photographer, but as a person. And I would like to think of my collaborations with the people that I photograph. I like to think that they will happen with or without the camera, meaning I am more interested on the friendship or the moment in the conversation, in what I learned from each other, than if that leads or not to a photo. So to me, that's very different. A lot of photographers that I know, before you enter the studio, you already need to sign a model release before anyone gets the camera. And for me, it's very different. For me, I want the person to be there. I would like to engage in a photographic, project with them. I might have different projects that I am inspired by different people, and I might suggest something to them. But at the end of the day, if they say, you know what, this is not really for me, that's fine because we had a great time. We
Yeah.
still had a good moment together, and I was attracted to the person, not just because they might fit into a project of mine, but also because of who they are and how interesting they are and the depth of our conversations. So I guess in the note, it's good to know that I don't ask for model releases in advance. I rely and I trust on our friendship. And then after I have the results of it, I share with them. In a way, I become creatively naked in their eyes. Some
Mhm.
images worked out, some images did not work out, but that's the beauty of the creative process. And in doing so, I can tell them, listen, I'm really interested on those 5 images. What do you think? And then if with their consent, I move ahead and then include those images or not. But at the end of the day, if they say, hey, I'm not sure. I actually just wanted to be here with you and it was fun to have your camera pointed at me, but I don't want you to open this to the world. It's also fine. The friendship is not gone. We continue to be friends.
So you've chosen 3 images of your own work to talk about here on the 3 series. Tell us, what did you go through in trying to decide through the, I'm sure, thousands of images you've captured
Right.
over your lifetime? How did you choose 3 images to talk about here today?
I think I wanted to choose 3 images. One that is maybe a foundation of how I work and my relationships. Then currently where the work is at, or as I mature as an artist, where do I want to go? And then one that leads into things into the future. I think it was more in that chronology, all of them very fundamental and important pieces.
I love that. Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at your number 1 image, and this is Philip II from 1997. Tell
Right.
us about this image. It's beautiful.
So when I realized that I wanted to work with the body, I obviously ran into the situation that there's a lot of it, not just in photography, but also uh, in the arts in general.
Hmm.
So it's one of those canon of art that can be daunting, but it's something that I also tell my students: don't you will never be able to find something that has never been done before. So you might as well tackle your subject matter of your passion and just try to do it in a different way. So when I graduated from art school or college, the big names at the time in the late 80s, early 90s was maybe Helmut Newton in terms
Yep.
of figurative, or Urberitz. Let's just throw those two. There was, of course, also my favorites is probably Imogen Cunningham
Yes.
and Ruth Bernhard. But that was a little bit of what was happening at the time. And I realized right away that I wanted to first start with more iconic images, not the full figure, not something that Urberitz and Newton were doing. So it's interesting to start your work by rejecting what you think you want to stay away from. Not because I don't admire the work, of course I do, but because I needed to find my own voice. And
Right.
so in doing that, I focused at first in parts of the body instead of the full figure. I myself needed to get comfortable how I represent someone in the nude. And I ended up choosing this image because it was important for me to have metaphors, not just the nude, not just a show and tell. Here is a person that I can prove was naked in front of my camera. I was never that kind of a photographer. But how do we create images that are metaphors, that are more than just two bodies next to each other? So the idea of union, the idea of space, the idea of negative space in between the bodies, the idea of a collaboration with someone, as well as the idea of, even though you see the figures there, an early form of abstraction in the fact that it's more about the lines, the light and the darks, and the union or the tension of those lines coming together than the actual body itself. So I think the very beginning of it already showed some seeds of my interest in the bigger presence of who are we in the body.
I think that's one of the great challenges of photographers. It is for me of finding that metaphor for the images as we create them. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you talked about that, because I think that's an
Yeah.
important
Well,
important
with
piece.
photography, we need to learn composition. If you're lighting, composition, and then if you are working with people, the psychology and the understanding of it. But then, photography, like I said, it's easy, right? You click and you have an image. You have color. You have perspective. You have everything there. I can understand painters saying, that the photography is easy. But then, what carries on and what's important to bring into it, if you do want to enter the world of fine art photography, there would be then a underlying current in the works that is also metaphorical. I think that some semantics or the language of fine art is important to enter the work as well.
Your second image is from the She Disappeared into Complete Silence, and this is AD 7258. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, so this is an image that for me was a very important series. It's a series that I was working on it from 2014 to 2019 in a glass house, a modernist structure outside of Los Angeles in the Mojave Desert, in the middle of nowhere with just desert outside. So it's not even some people think about Palm Springs and the manicured landscape. This is the raw desert and this glass house with a mirror ceiling. So the house itself became an extension of my camera. I use a Hasselblad, which is in itself is a box with a mirror and the lens. So the house had this glass and the mirror aspects of it. And I think I took a very important step in this body of work, which was not to just photograph the figure in front of me, just like from point A, photographer to subject, but to work tangentially. Meaning, this was the first body of work where I was able to look at the reflections between us and photograph the reflection itself, or push the figure into abstractions through those reflections. So that was a very great body of work. And I was able to also bring influences. You could see maybe Henry Miller's sculptural work to it, or a little bit of architecture without being overly architectural. I'm not an architectural photographer, but I was able to use architecture in the way that it reviews how we think as humans, right? So the architecture becomes the mind, maybe the intellectual mind, the manifestation of thought. And then you have the person in and the presence of the person there as a scale, but also as a floating thinking mindset in this world of nature mixed in with the man-made, architecturally made construction that we're able to do as humans, and then the figure in it. So for me, that's really quite an amazing image. It taught me. I think it's important to have works that teach you. And I do, as a parallel to literature, I do like those books that mention the characters, but they start writing about what the character is thinking, not so much defining the ambience of the place. I don't like things should be descriptive. I like books that take me in the mind of the character. And I think that that's what I brought into this body of work as well.
I was so happy when you sent this image to talk about, in part, and this is wholly for myself only, is because there's a project I've been working on that does something similar, not nearly as well as you do,
It's fine.
that looks at the interior and the exterior at the same time of buildings that are sort of in transition, and how you've played with the reflections and what's on the interior. I just love. It's so It's so
Yeah.
well done and so lovely. And you can, and I can see from what I do how you're sort of making these little micro movements to find the placement, and so that everything is where it needs to be, in
Right.
working with the reflections and on the interiors.
And I guess for photographers is interesting. Once in a while, people ask me, "Oh, did you Photoshop the reflections and this and that?" And no, I basically use the existing materiality of that space. So
Yeah.
this is a
Yep.
straight shot, which is
Yep.
fantastic. And at the same time, just as the first image, yes, you have a nude there, but the nude happens to just be there. Is not a show and tell. It's a presence. That's a very
Yes.
important thing for me always.
Your third image is Realm from the King's
Yeah.
Road series.
So Realm is my latest series, which came out in 2021 and has been exhibited. It's really interesting because this series has been a really strong series, and it has been exhibited until the early January of this year. It's the one that went to museums in China, in Germany, was exhibited in various, distinguished galleries. And it's a story. It's a series that offered a couple of opportunities for me that I hadn't played in the past with. It was a series that I was bringing together a architect that came from Austria to work with Frank Lloyd Wright in Los Angeles in the US and built his first house, which nowadays is considered the first uh, modernist house in America, in the US. And in doing so, he fell in love with someone, but wasn't able to be with this person. They were desynchronized for whatever reason. I studied his archive and found a breakup letter where he writes to this mysterious lover that they can no longer see each other, and she must find the life is rich without bottom, and she must find her treasures without him. That letter had this, it was signed by him, but did not have the name of the person. I talked to the scholars. It was a series where I brought in a lot more research and archival work. And it was a series too that I took the challenge of recreating that mysterious person. So how do you recreate a mysterious person photographically, right? So the big challenge on that work was to bring these two people together in my photographic work. So to photograph the architect, or the man behind the architect, the intimacy of his thoughts and who he really was, I had the house as a remaining of his body to photograph that, metaphorically speaking. I had the archive to have his handwriting and his personal thoughts. And to bring in the lover into this visual novel, I photographed a friend of mine inside the house. And I photographed her in a way, the house was built in 1920s, in the way the photography was being used at the time, which is solarization. So
Right.
it kind of happened that the photo surrealists at the time were just breaking into solarization. And everyone talks about Man Ray, but I was also looking very much into Irving Blumenfeld. I was also very much enjoyed the story of Lee Miller, who had an accident in the darkroom, and that's how the whole solarization came to life.
Right. Right.
But in doing so, I went back to the darkroom, and that's why I also wanted to include here. I went back to the darkroom and from negatives tried to do the same. It was difficult because nowadays we have different papers, different chemistry, which are not conducive of those things. They have less chemistry, and we kind of need all those bad chemicals there to make it look great. But I was able to chisel that technique further and further and find my voice in it. And what was important for me and why I adopted the solarized print technique is because it allowed the disruptive darkroom technique allowed me to dematerialize the subject. So part of her are rendered as you would expect a black and white portrait of someone, while with the switch of light in the darkroom, an unpredictable other half of her portrait is dematerialized, is oxidized in a different way by the developer, creating what they call the Mach line. So the maximal oxidization is this black line, because we're talking about silver. So it's
Yeah.
this black line that is crossing over her face,
Yeah.
which was the absolute perfect effect for someone like me trying to bring a lover out of time and space. So it
Yeah.
could be that image where he keeps longing of her and he could imagine her for a split second in the house, or it could be that she in her thoughts are imagining being back with him. Is that little bit of after breakup or longing for each other emotion brought into the photography?
You know, sometimes when you see a piece of work and you learn about it, you get goosebumps. And just looking at it, and what you've just done for me is in talking about this and showing this to me is giving me goosebumps. It's just
Yeah.
I love it.
Well,
What a
I
great
do
description.
I do get, many times, even if the work is from 97 or from now, when I am in the darkroom or if I'm processing the color works or whatever it is, I still get the moment where my heart skips a beat. I still have that. And I think that that's important. I mean, the
Oh
things
yeah.
that we surround ourselves, right? What we decide, we make decisions all the time. And my decision to work with people that I enjoy, that they like me, I like them. Like I work, I don't just take a picture, run, and the process is over. I like to be surrounded by things that make me feel good. And I also want that my creative process with other people feels good to them.
You make me want to be a different photographer because
Well,
because because my photography I'm generally a street person, and
yeah,
I make the photograph and run.
yeah, yeah.
I want to be you.
Well, you cannot. That's the beautiful thing about conversations and about getting to know each other. Not necessarily me, but just anyone. Is that we keep on adjusting our side ourselves to what we think is interesting. So
Yes.
you might you on the street, and then again, you need to respect who you are and know who you are, and go that way. But it doesn't hurt sometimes to say hello to someone at the street either. Sometimes they give you even more.
Yes, it is no question about that. And some of my best interactions have been just like that. So thank you for that. So the last question I ask people on this 3 series is if there is an image or a work of art from another artist that you feel is important for us to know about, and maybe that we have the opportunity to speak with that artist if they happen to be alive. Is there an image or a work of art that you want to
Yeah.
talk about?
It's one of those things. A long time ago, I went to London. It might have been for an exhibition of mine, and I had the chance to go to the Tate Museum, and I got a postcard. Obviously, I saw the painting, but I also brought a postcard with me, and it has stayed next to my desk since then. It's called Landscape from a Dream by Paul Nash. He's a British painter, a surrealist. And I think the reason why it kept there is a little bit of I keep things that teach me something, right? So the reason that I kept it is because it's of this bird looking at themselves. So that idea of a portrait, or the idea of we identify with ourselves. Even if it's the nude or the portrait of someone else, we as species like to look at ourselves. So that is one element. I like I like there is a there's a structure that goes from color into transparency. I have used different techniques to abstract the figure that the painting has. I like the landscape into the painting. I like some of those structures, like the circles. So there's a couple of mystery. There's a couple of unsolved things in this painting that continue to be question marks and continue to inspire me.
I love that you have talked about not only a work that is important to you, but you've shown us why that is the case. So thank you for that, Mona Kuhn. What a pleasure talking to you. You've made me want to be a different photographer. You've given me goosebumps on a couple of occasions during our conversation. Such a pleasure to talk to you. And just as I said at the start, it's really an honor to have you on the program. So impressed with your work. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
All right. And thank you all for watching The Crit House.